The New York Knicks had themselves quite a game last night against the Indiana Pacers, and it could have been the most fun game that I've seen played this season in this short NBA year. And that win against Indiana took the Knicks to 5-4. And ever since their 0-3 start, they've been looking pretty okay. So what are the Knicks doing well? What are they not doing well? And how would I project them as the season goes along? Well, of course, there's Porzingis, the Latvian gangbanger, the zinger, Porzingod, whatever else you want to come up with. The dude's a freak. He's 7'3", and he is like a shooting guard. And I think the craziest thing about Porzingis to me is how he doesn't have to attack on switches. Because in today's NBA, we're so focused on switching before we post up. I don't know why I'm saying we, as if I'm associated with the NBA at all. Teams want switches before they post up. But with Porzingis, there are times when he just posts up on the opposing team's big guy, and he'll just hit a turnaround jumper or a hook shot over him, and it's actually pretty productive stuff. Now, if he does end up on a switch and he has a 2-guard on him or a 3-guard, I mean, anything besides a 7-foot center, it's almost like a layup for him. The Knicks do a really good job of getting the ball to Porzingis around the elbow, maybe about 15 feet in. And at that range, I mean, all he has to do is get a not horrible look at the basket, and there's a decent chance that it's going to go in. He's currently shooting 49% from mid-range, a lot of that being around the elbow. 58% in the paint, and about 57% at the basket, which is still a little lower than you'd like it to be for a guy his size, but it's not bad. You can just run anything with Porzingis. The natural gravity that he creates just by being on the floor is huge, so even if he's not directly involved in the play, he's always going to have an effect on the defense. And, I mean, what's he averaging on the season right now? Like 30 points a game on 50% shooting and 36% from 3? I mean, I have to assume 30 points a game on 50% is not going to maintain itself, but if he finishes with like 27 points a game at 47% shooting, I think that's fair to expect from Porzingis this season. Definitely an all-star. Probably the best power forward in the Eastern Conference, I would say. You look at all the best fours in the NBA, you got Anthony Davis, and then after that, I think you're having a real conversation about if Porzingis is number 2. Depends on how high you think of Draymond Green and stuff. Now, if we can look at the rest of these New York Knicks, I want to talk about Frank Ntilikina, who had his first big game of the NBA last night against those Indiana Pacers. I just got to talk about Ntilikina's defense, first off. Dude is pretty legit, and I think he can grow into a really good defensive player in the NBA. There were a couple of things he did last night, just in the time that I watched, which was mainly the fourth quarter, that was really impressive stuff from him. Twice, he knocked the ball away from Darren Collison. Didn't actually result in steals, but knocking the ball away from an NBA point guard is still pretty good. There was a possession where he got switched onto Sabonis, and the Pacers wanted to post up Sabonis, and as the pass was coming in, Ntilikina knocked it away, and then it led to a Tim Hardaway fast break bucket on the other end. And then there was another play where Bojan Bogdanovic found himself wide open in the corner, and Ntilikina, who was pretty close to the top of the key, just sprinted all the way over to contest Bogdanovic's shot. And that's a good sign. In a perfect world, he would be able to recognize that Bogdanovic was open before he actually received the pass. But it was still a really good effort play, and that tells me, just with some more seasoning, Ntilikina is going to be able to see that play before it even really develops. And that's really good stuff. And to have that out of your point guard is awesome. And then everyone says he's going to be a good three-point shooter. For the season, he's shooting like 32% from 3, more like 31%. I assume he's going to just be better. I mean, the 2 threes he hit last night under pressure were very poised and, played off of Porzingis really well. And those two could really be the foundation of a Knicks rebuild over the next, well, a rebuild will be a couple of seasons, but they could be a staple of the Knicks for the next decade or whatever. We know Porzingis will be, and Ntilikina's looked good so far. Now we just got to talk about the rest of the Knicks. Actually, no, we don't. I want to talk about Frank a little bit more. He looks really comfortable in the pick and roll. The one thing people said about him was he was going to be more of a lower usage point guard, and that could still become a real thing. But his handle has actually been pretty okay in that he's not like hesitant in the screen or roll. Like, he'll get the pick from someone and he'll go and look to attack. He's finished at the basket at least a couple of times from what I've seen. But he's also been making some good passes to the roll guy where he'll just get that initial penetration, which forces the opposing big man to have to care about him. And then in that moment, he'll hit the roll guy with a bounce pass. Sometimes it's Michael Beasley, sometimes it's Enes Kanter, sometimes it's Kyle O'Quinn, sometimes it's Porzingis. Ntilikina's been good. I mean, 4 assists a game, that's pretty solid. And now let's talk about the rest of the Knicks. The one thing I've noticed is how good they use cutters. And I have to give Jeff Hornacek credit here. There was one play they ran that I remember where they had, I think it was Ntilikina come up floor. He passed it off to Kyle O'Quinn around the three-point line on the elbow. And then on the other side of the floor, they had Tim Hardaway Jr. cut to the rim. And then O'Quinn hit him with a perfect bounce pass that led to 2 points. They've had McDermott cutting to the basket from the corner. There have been times when they've had initial action with, I think it was McDermott or Hardaway, or Courtney Lee too, I believe, where they would get a screen from like Porzingis, and they would come up to the top of the key, and if they were open, they could shoot it or do whatever. But if they weren't open, they would then immediately get another screen from Porzingis cutting to the rim. And it was successful, at least in some of the highlights that I saw. So that's good. There's like actual motion going on, and that's good to see from Jeff Hornacek. And that's also interesting because when he was the coach of the Suns, when Goran Dragic blew up and Bledsoe played half the year and was good, they ran a lot of pick and roll, and this team has not run as much of that, which is good because they really shouldn't be running that much. I mean, still, it's a staple of basketball, of course, but you don't run it every single possession because you don't have the personnel to do it. Ntilikina's a rookie. Jared Jack has actually been good on his playmaking, but he's not really intimidating as a scorer or a shooter. But when they have run it has been kind of successful, so that's good. Some other things to make note of. The Knicks are absolutely horrible when Porzingis is not in the game. When he's in the game, their net rating is 2.5. When he's out of the game, it's -12. Maybe they could have some different lineups. I haven't watched every minute of the Knicks, but I've seen some stuff, but I've mainly seen with Porzingis in the game. I mean, there isn't really another creator on this team who's really efficient right now. You would hope that Tim Hardaway Jr. can be that guy, but he's struggled with actually putting the ball in the basket. Jared Jack's a good playmaker, but he's not really much of a scorer, like I just said. But I would look at Hardaway as that guy who can lead some second units when Porzingis is not in the game. But now we got to talk about the center position, which I think is an extremely important topic, because the center next to Porzingis has to be at least kind of particular in my mind. So they've been playing Enes Kanter, and we all know the deal with him. He's a good rebounder, he's a good inside scorer, he sucks on defense. That's basically what it is. I should make note, some of the highlights I've seen this year, his defense has not been always horrible, but there have also been times, like against the Pacers, he got beat by Miles Turner on pick and pops a few times. There were a couple times when he ended up switched onto Darren Collison and he didn't have much of a chance. So, I mean, Enes Kanter's still in there. Basically, when Kanter is in the game, the Knicks are -4. When he's out of the game, they're plus 0.5 in very similar minutes. He's played 230 minutes. He hasn't played 202 minutes. Also, Kyle O'Quinn. O'Quinn's net rating is 2.5, and when O'Quinn's not in the game, the Knicks are minus 4.3. And, of course, I'm not just going to blindly look at stats and just say, well, that doesn't matter. It should be said, Kanter is killing it on the boards right now. He's grabbing 4.4 offensive rebounds a game, and the Knicks, mainly as a result of that, are the second best offensive rebounding team in the NBA. So Kanter is going to give you some extra buckets, but I do think he's currently playing, how many minutes a game? 26 minutes a game? That might be a little too much. I would not play Kanter that much. Also, Kyle O'Quinn has only played 16 minutes a game. I would want both of those guys playing about 22 to 23 minutes per, because I think O'Quinn's a better defender, Kanter's better offensively. If you play one of them too long, you might suffer on one end of the floor. My gut feeling is playing O'Quinn more would be better, because he's been a better defender and a better shot blocker and more physical throughout his career. But if Kanter's going to kill it on the boards and help out Porzingis, then maybe you can have Kanter in there just enough. As far as what happens to Willy Hernangomez, I don't know, man. It seems like Jeff Hornacek's committed to Enes Kanter at the moment. But overall, I like what the Knicks are doing. Porzingis is great, and then they're getting just enough offense out of like Ntilikina pick and rolls, cuts to the basket. The threes have not really been that great for them so far. Like, Porzingis is making his, but Lance Thomas is not making his. McDermott's at 36, and then you got Tim Hardaway Jr., who's just missing everything right now, so the threes could actually become more of a thing for them. It's good. I do have some fears. I fear that Enes Kanter's bad defense is going to catch up to them eventually. I do fear that the fact that they're terrible when Porzingis is not in the game could also catch up to them. So, you know, there's going to be some exciting times. There's also going to be some crappy times this year for the Knicks. And you know what? That's okay, because they're in a rebuild. They have a star player, and they have a rookie in Ntilikina who looks pretty good. So let's not get too hard on them.